we started at Orange County chanting either Shoshinge or the Nembutsu Wasan, because each are a little bit shorter. So today we did the Nembutsu Wasan, but technically you're supposed to do both, but it's a little bit long. So I just wanted to explain that traditionally both are chanted. Okay, next slide. So this melody, there was a beautiful melody that we chanted. This melody for this Wasan, it goes back to Buddhism in China over 1,300 years ago. 1,300 years ago. So imagine that. Next slide, please. Adele, her song Hello was #1 for only 10 weeks. But this Nembutsu Wasan melody, it's been in the Buddhist top 40 for 1,300 years. How are you ever going to compete with that? But it just shows this, what a tremendous tradition that we're all a part of. Not just Buddhism in Japan, but Buddhism that goes back to China, Buddhism that goes back to India. We're a part of this flow of the Dharma that started 2,500 years ago in ancient India, came through China and Japan, and we share, of course, many common teachings, but even things like melodies for chanting. Next slide. So, go ahead and go to the next. So I'd like you to also look at page 82 of your service book. So we chanted Nembutsu Wasan, pages 76 to 81, and page 82 has the English translation of those wasans that we just chanted. Okay, so I'd like you to kind of be familiar with this, and what we're going to talk about is the very first one. The very first one. So it's Amida has passed through 10 kalpas now since realizing Buddhahood. Dharma, body's wheel of light is without bound, shining on the blind and ignorant of the world. Okay, so next slide. So this first, we have to take it a little bit at a time. And the first line, Amida has passed through 10 kalpas now since realizing Buddhahood. So we have to talk about who is Amida Buddha. So go to the next slide, please. So in Shin Buddhism, we talk about the historical Shakyamuni Buddha, but we also talk about Amida Buddha. And so this image on the altar is the image of Amida Buddha, not Shakyamuni Buddha. Okay? So there's a subtle difference that we should understand. So let's go to the next slide. So Shakyamuni Buddha, as we all know as Buddhists, is the historical Buddha who lived in ancient India 2,500 years ago, attained enlightenment, and then shared the teachings of Buddhism. So we all know about the historical Shakyamuni Buddha. Next slide. But Amida Buddha, if I'm to explain it very simply, Amida Buddha is the heart of Shakyamuni Buddha, or the timeless Buddha. The truth that he attained, Shakyamuni Buddha, the historical Buddha, the truth that he attained is a timeless truth. And in that sense, there is this timeless Buddha, or the timeless heart of Shakyamuni. Let's go to the next slide. So we all have historical mothers. Okay, we all have historical mothers. And go to the next slide, please. So this is my mom. She's now 89 years of age. This was taken in Las Vegas at the Main Street buffet, I think last year. She's kind of smiling because I think she hit a jackpot the night before. So we all have historical mothers, okay? Go to the next slide. But the heart of all mothers, we could talk about the heart of all mothers as a timeless mother. And this could be not only the heart of a human mother, maybe it could be the heart of a mother, of a dog or a cat or a bird or fish. They too, those mothers have a timeless heart. Okay, let's go to the next slide. So Shakyamuni Buddha, the historical Buddha, expresses his innermost heart by telling a story, which is in this larger sutra, called the Larger Sutra. The Larger Sutra of Immeasurable Life is the full title, but we abbreviate it and we say the Larger Sutra. Really, Shakyamuni Buddha, the sutras are all the sermons of Shakyamuni Buddha that were written years after he passed away. But our tradition follows a sutra called the Larger Sutra. Zen Buddhism follows a different sutra. Tibetan Buddhism follows yet different sutras. But we follow actually 3 sutras, but the main one is called this Larger Sutra. So Shakyamuni Buddha tells a story. Okay, next slide. So stories are timeless, like Star Wars. So who's the hero of Star Wars? Well, many heroes, but maybe we could say focuses on Luke Skywalker, Harry Potter, Wizard of Oz. These are all wonderful, timeless stories. Of course, we know they're fiction, but yet the story really captivates us. The story touches us. The story teaches us things, sometimes timeless truth. Next slide. So we kind of sometimes have lost the sense of how important stories are in our life, and that they do teach us something timeless, something true. The Joseph Campbell did wonderful work on mythology and kind of bringing out the real significance and meaning of ancient stories and ancient myths. And I think George Lucas was influenced a lot by Joseph Campbell in creating the Star Wars trilogy, because he was able to really captivate us in Star Wars because he told such a captivating story. Next slide. So in this Larger Sutra, Shakyamuni Buddha tells a timeless story about a bodhisattva who becomes a Buddha named Amida. Okay, so Amida Buddha is the hero of the story in the Larger Sutra that is taught by Shakyamuni Buddha. So Amida Buddha is not a historical Buddha, but at the same time, it doesn't mean that Amida Buddha is not important. You know, in some ways, myth and story expresses truth deeper than scientific truth. So in that sense, this story that expresses Amida Buddha is a timeless, profound story. So the hero of the story, think of it this way, is Amida Buddha. Okay? Next slide. So it's like our historical mothers telling us a story about the heart of all mothers. About the heart of all mothers. In that sense, Shakyamuni Buddha is telling us his deepest, innermost heart of enlightenment, how to express, how to explain his profound heart of enlightenment in a way that unenlightened sentient beings could understand. That was his great challenge. So, in many cases, he told stories to communicate this deep and profound heart of enlightenment. Okay, next slide. So Shinran Shonin, he reveres the timeless Buddha. Of course, he reveres Shakyamuni Buddha too as a historical Buddha, but more than the historical Shakyamuni Buddha, he sees the deep, profound significance of this timeless Buddha of Amida. Okay? Next slide. So let's go back to the Wasan. So this first line, it starts out, Amida has passed through 10 kalpas now since realizing Buddhahood. So the story starts out, once upon a time, eons and eons ago. So let's talk about what is a kalpa. Next slide. So a kalpa, very simply put, is eons and eons of time. And next slide. This is the explanation of what a kalpa is. So imagine a rock, but it's really more like a mountain. It's a mile tall, it's a mile wide, and it's a mile long. Okay, huge rock or mountain. Okay, next slide. Once every 3 years, a heavenly maiden in a gown comes down from the heavens and brushes her gown over this rock. Next slide. So the time it takes to wear down this rock, a mile tall, a mile wide, a mile long, the amount of time it takes to wear down this rock by just this heavenly maiden brushing her gown over it, that's one kalpa. That's one kalpa. Amida became the Buddha 10 kalpas ago. So it's kind of beyond our even conception. Even one kalpa, we can't imagine how long that might be. But I took astronomy in college and the universe and planets and stars, billions and billions of years, just kind of beyond our sense of time. So, like any story, long ago, there was this bodhisattva who became a Buddha by the name of Amida. Okay, next slide. So going back then to the Wasan, so Amida has passed through 10 kalpas now since realizing Buddhahood. Okay, so then next slide. So we